Hi guys, Ben Woodgate from APT. A product that many are apprehensive about fitting is the fuel tank guard. Come on and I'll show you how it's done. The APT Land Rover Discovery 2 fuel tank guard is the key to protecting your only fuel supply, the fuel tank. We're reusing factory mounting points, so all that's needed are a few basic hand tools. So what do you get? 4mm 350 grade steel, laser cut and CNC folded to keep your fuel tank safe from nasties. The APT Land Rover Discovery 2 fuel tank guard covers the entire fuel tank from front to back and left to right. The APT Land Rover Discovery 2 fuel tank guard also becomes the new retaining mechanism for the fuel tank. It has to be tight to prevent chafing. When I do my installs, I like to work in a nice clear workspace, so I'm going to remove any obstacles in my way. Preferably for the install, we want the tank as close to empty as possible. Why? Because we want the tank as light as possible. I like to chock the tank on the two rear wings to hold it in place while I'm doing the install. Today, I've got 2 rolls of 25mm tape lying around, so I'm just going to use those. We're going to need to remove the factory tank retainer. To do this, we're going to need a 13mm socket for the rear and a 15mm socket for the front. And the case is simply remove the bolts and drop it down. And now moving across to the other side. Now to the front. Now that we're down to the last retaining nut, you might want to gently brace the retaining plate so it doesn't fall. Now, as I remove the last nut, I'm going to gently drop the retainer out of place and ready for the install. The fuel tank now is supported by your 2 chocks. Now that we're at the stage of mounting the fuel tank guard, as it's quite weighty, if you're working by yourself, you're either going to need a mechanical means, like a car jack or something, to assist you with it, or you're going to need a second pair of hands to help you hold it in place. Once you've got it in place, before you start tightening any bolts, make sure the rear 2 and the front 2 mounting holes are all lined up with their proper locations. As all trucks are different and different people have worked on them at different times, today we've hit a bit of a snag. This bolt is a bit longer than normal, so I'm going to have to back this off so we can continue with the install. Now that the bash guard isn't fouling on the excess thread hanging through the nut on the inside here, we can continue on with the install. Okay, now we're going to start the fit off. I'm going to start at the front of the vehicle and I'm going to loosely start the 2 nuts on the fixed bolts in their position. I'm only going to use a couple of threads to get it started, just to hold it, because I still want it to be loose to give me the wiggle room at the back to get it fitted off. It's just a couple of turns on each nut just to get it started. And same for the other side. A couple of turns and that's all that's needed. Okay, now it's time to turn our attention to the rear 2 mounts. In the kit you would have been supplied with some new zinc bolts. We're going to use these today because they're a bit longer and a bit easier to get started. For this, I'm going to use a punch, but you can use a big screwdriver, an old bolt, or whatever you have lying around. We're going to stick your tool through the mount on one side and use that to manipulate the guard until you can get the bolt started on the other side. Once you get that bolt through the hole and up inside, just secure the nut in there, turn the bolt, get that thread started. Then we'll move to the other side. Now that we have 3 of the 4 bolts started, we can start to remove the chocks or anything else that's in our way. With those out of the way, now it's time to turn our attention to this final bolt. Same again. Get the bolt started on the nut by finger, and then we'll go back to the tools to get it tightened off. Right about now, you should have something that resembles this. Front two started, rear two started, the logo at the back. It's time to start tightening. I'm going to start with the front two first, just so I can get out from underneath the truck. Because we've started all the mounting bolts first, now we can do all the bolts up as tight as possible. Same for the next one. To tighten the new bolts we've used at the rear of the vehicle, for this we're going to require a 16mm socket. This truck's seen a few adventures, so there's a few battle scars underneath here. On this set I can't put my socket in, so I'm going to have to spanner it. Takes a little bit longer with the spanner, but you can still do it up nice and tight. They're high tensile bolts, so don't be scared to swing on them. There we go. You'll know that the fuel tank guard is fitted off properly now because all 4 mounting bolts are fitted off properly, all mounting surfaces are flush with each other, and you'll also notice that the fuel tank guard is flush hard against the fuel tank. This is to prevent chafing. Before we fully finish though, we have to go through and check everywhere we've been and go through it, tighten up everything that we've undone. Like everything on the vehicle, nice and tight. You've done it. Essential, high quality protection done in your driveway or garage at home. I'm Ben from APT. If you have any questions, email me or call me. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the products.